Texas baseball collapses against Oklahoma State. Softball completes a road series sweep against the Red Raiders, and round 2 of the NBA playoffs is underway. All this and more coming up on College Press Box. Good evening and welcome to College Press Box. I'm your host, Emme Basnett, and she's Jaxie Pidgeon. We have a great show for you today. Let's head over to the dish for some highlights from this past weekend.
Well, Emme, it definitely was not Texas baseball's weekend, but here's Sunday. We're going to start out with sophomore Lucas Gordon on the mound, who had a great outing on Sunday, striking out a career-high 11 batters, 2 of which came in the first inning. Moving into the top of the second, the lefty added 2 more strikeouts. He retired 13 straight batters between the second and 6th innings. To the bottom of the second we go, and it's Silas Ardwan. Well, not yet. We're still on Lucas Gordon with his strikeouts of the night. Now it's Silas Ardwan up to the plate, and he's going to crank this one over Garrett Martin's head for a solo homer. And that would put the Longhorns up 2-0. That was the Louisiana native's 9th home run of the season. Next at the plate, Skylar Messenger, and you can wave that one goodbye as he demolishes it right up the guts to bring the score to 3-0. And you thought 2 in a row was good. We're going to make it 3 here as Dylan Campbell hits this no-brainer to left, and the Longhorns are going to go up 4. OSU remains scoreless. Top of the 6th, it's a full count, and Lucas Gordon comes out on top as Rock Reggio strikes out, and that was out number 2. And it seems like deja vu as there's another full count for Gordon, and he wins the battle, striking out Griffin Dorsing for out number 3. Man, was he fired up, and it looks like the fans were too. Now it's Zane Morehouse on the mound, and Reggio said, "Don't get mad, get even," as he smashes this one to right center. With the bases loaded, in comes Trinkle, Brown, and then there could be a play at the plate, and it's not in time. McClain is down and safe, and OSU now trails only by 3. We have another pitching change. Coy Cobb on the mound, bases loaded again, but Griffin Dorsing was also seeking revenge as he rockets this one out to deep left, and you could say goodbye to that one. A grand slam for the grad student from Wisconsin, and Oklahoma State takes the lead 8-7. To the top of the 7th, and it's Brett Brown finding a gap up the middle. David Minden will come home, and the play is to Messenger at third, but he's going to get the ball knocked out of his glove, and the tying run is home safe. Bottom of the 9th, the Longhorns down 2, and Messenger grounds this one to short, but that would not be enough, and the Cowboys win this one 10-8. We now welcome in our baseball analyst, John Kelley. John, how are you doing?
I'm great. Happy to be here.
Now, John, this was a brutal weekend for Texas baseball, as we've seen, losing to Oklahoma State, Big 12 rival, 3 straight. Tell me, what went wrong?
Absolutely. Texas pitching is what went wrong, and they definitely struggled this weekend. In the Sunday match, as you mentioned, Texas was up 7-0 by the end of the 6th. 1 inning later, Texas was down 10-7. 7th inning saw a total collapse of the Longhorn defense. Lucas Gordon started the game, keeping it scoreless through the 6th. He began to tire in the 6th, hitting a batter, but he was able to make it out scoreless. Then comes the 7th. After giving up a single and a walk, Gordon was given the boot, with Pierce bringing in Zane Morehouse from the bullpen. Morehouse, he hit the batter. First batter up, leaving the bases loaded. He then walked the next batter, giving up the first run for the Cowboys. Morehouse then gave up a double, clearing the bases, making it 7-4. And he was given the boot then. Not looking good for Texas.
Yeah, and then they bring in another one.
Yep. Next pitcher up, Coy Cobb, who in 13 pitches managed to load the bases again and gave up a grand slam to Griffin Dorsing, which ended his time at the mound. Quick up and down. Next up, Jared Southard to the rubber. He walked 2 batters and was given the boot after 11 pitches. Last up to the mound for the Texas Longhorns was Luke Harrison. He gave the last 2 Oklahoma State runs, 1 earned and the other unearned, off an error by outfielder Skylar Messenger. Regardless, Harrison was able to get out of the final out of the inning and end this disastrous inning for Texas and this
disastrous game as a whole.
Yeah.
So like you said, the pitching is what seemed to cause a lot of this, what caused these losses, honestly. Especially on Sunday, you said Lucas Gordon, Zane Morehouse, Coy Cobb. Those 3 were key to that inning. What should Texas do to improve its pitching woes going forward?
Absolutely. The bullpen is really the crux of the issue for Texas. 9 of the 16 losses for this Texas team have been the result of bullpen pitchers. In too many of these games, the offense has been ahead or keeping up with the opposition just for runs to be allowed by the bullpen. What really needs to happen is this bullpen needs to take a step back, breathe, and focus on the fundamentals. Focus harder on pitch control. This past series, the Longhorns hit 8 batters, and that's 8 runners on the bases, most of which ended up for runs against the Texas Longhorns. So they need to look back at themselves, focus on the fundamentals, and also stop hitting pitchers. It's a bad form.
Yeah, that would help, just the basics. And following this devastating weekend for Texas is a midweek matchup against Houston Baptist and then a weekend series against West Virginia. So how would you say the Longhorns fare against the Huskies and the Mountaineers?
All right, this Tuesday, the Longhorns will take on Houston Baptist out of the Southland Conference. They currently sit at 3rd in their conference with a conference record of 11-7 and an overall record of 18-27. This should be a walk in the park for Texas, but as we saw 2 weeks ago versus Air Force, nothing should be taken for granted. Longhorn fans should watch out for HBU junior catcher Kevin Ortiz, who is batting .321 with 3 doubles, 12 RBIs, and 15 runs on the season, and first baseman Brennan Bales, who is batting .318 with 9 doubles, a triple, a home run, 20 RBIs, and 18 runs for the Huskies. Looking forward to this weekend. However, West Virginia will be a bit more of a challenge for the Longhorns. The Mountaineers currently sit 1 spot above Texas in the Big 12 standings with a record of 9-6 in conference play and 26-16 overall. West Virginia is coming off a 2-1 series victory against the Kansas Jayhawks this past weekend, which saw back-to-back 10-run games for the Mountaineers. Longhorn fans should look out for outfielder Austin Davis, who is batting .335 with 44 runs and 22 RBIs this season, and also catcher McGuire Holbrook, who is batting .331 with 6 home runs and 30 RBIs so far this season. I think Texas will be able to get the series win. However, I think they'll drop one game, making it a 2-1 series.
All right, we'll have to see how it plays out. Thanks as always, John, for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jaxie.
When we return, we'll be joined by Matt Marinchak to talk Texas softball. You won't want to miss it.
Welcome back to College Press Box. Thanks for sticking with us. We're now going to toss it over to Matt and Emme for some expert softball analysis.
We now welcome our softball analyst, Matt Marinchak. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm good. Happy to be here one last time.
I know, last lap. So, this past weekend, the sweep against Texas Tech. Can you talk a little bit about what went right for Texas in this game?
Sure. After coming off that sweep against Oklahoma State, they really needed to sweep Texas Tech to stay in the Big 12 race, and their bats really came alive early against Texas Tech. They started off the game on Friday down 2-0 against Texas Tech, but hit a pair of solo home runs to tie it up, and then eventually hit a 2 RBI single to take the lead. During the second game, they played doubleheader on Saturday. They scored 11 runs, including 3 home runs to run rule Texas Tech 11-1. During the third game, they never trailed Texas Tech, and at one point they were up 7-3. There was some lackluster pitching towards the end of the game. It was closer than it needed to be, but they were still able to come away with a much-needed victory. And yeah, the pitching was on and off throughout the weekend. Kelley threw 14 strikeouts on Friday, but she also gave up those 4 runs. Sophia Simpson threw a complete gem on Saturday in Game 1. On Sunday, a little bit spotty. Estelle Check really wasn't getting the ball in the right places, but Texas was still able to come away with the victory.
Yeah, overall, the ball was in the right places when it mattered, because they rounded out that win. Something about the youth of this team is really what gives it its spark. Can you talk about some of the young standouts on the team that you see?
Yeah, so I think Texas softball, they have a bright future because they have some great freshmen standouts on both sides of the ball. Third baseman Mia Scott's a player that really stood out to me this season. Mia started off the season hot and really hasn't slowed down since then. She's third on the team with batting average, batting at .364, second with hits with 52, and she's one of the fastest players on the team, and she uses that speed to her advantage, giving her team-high 4 triples on the year and 17 stolen bases. Her skill set's very similar to that of Janae Jefferson's, and she should fill that void once Jefferson graduates next year. And then on the other side of the ball, Sophia Simpson's really stood out to be as a freshman pitcher. She was a little up and down in the beginning of the season, but once she got in gear, she really got in gear. She threw 5 complete games this season, including 1 no-hitter against UTSA. And she pitches in the zone just really well. She has 90 strikeouts, that's 9th in the Big 12. And she throws a repertoire of great pitches, including a great rise ball that really forces opponents to bat at 239. And she just has great versatility as a pitcher. She played as a starter, as a relief pitcher, and a closing pitcher. And with continued development and coaching from Coach Mike White, Simpson has potential to be one of the all-time greats of Texas.
So overall, a lot of hope for the future of this Texas team. What does this team need to do to make a deep run in postseason, though?
Yeah, so looking ahead at postseason, I know they play against Baylor this weekend. 2 in Austin, 1 in Waco. But Baylor's not really a team they have to worry about. They should win at least 2 out of 3. But if they want to make a deep postseason run like they did in 2019, 2021, they made it to the Super Regionals, but they didn't advance. They lost against Oklahoma State in 2021 and Alabama in 2019. But they need a lot of things to go right because this team really hasn't been able to beat elite teams like Alabama, like Oklahoma State, and they lost 2 out of 3 against Oklahoma. They're a team that really does not play good complementary softball. They'll either pitch really well but hit poorly, or hit very poorly and pitch very well. We saw that against both Oklahoma teams. And looking at their stats compared to other teams in the country, they're one of the worst fielding teams in all of D1 softball, ranking at 186, I believe. And batting average are right about top 30, pitching middle of the pack around 90. But this team just really hasn't been getting it done to have playing complete softball games, and their fielding's just been bad. Like, they have 63 fielding errors this season, which is on pace to being the worst in program history. And we've seen this team improve throughout the season. They had a horrible showing opening up the season in Clearwater, but unless they fix all these issues, I don't think they're going to make a postseason run, even if they have good pitching and good hitting. If they don't clean up that fielding, it's just not going to happen for them.
So really what I'm hearing is just targeting those fielding issues and boosting the all-around performance of the team. Well, that is all we have for today. Thank you so much, Matt, for the softball analysis. When we return, we have some expert insight on the 8 remaining teams in the 2022 NBA playoffs. Stick around. Welcome back into College Press Box. Marcus Risen and Drew Jacob are here to preview Round 2 series of the NBA playoffs. Take it away, Marcus.
Thanks, Emmy. Drew, who can believe this is our last show on College Press Box? I know, it sure has been a fun ride, but enough with the tears. Let's talk basketball. We have 4 incredible series to preview in the NBA playoffs. 2 already started, 2 starting tonight. I'll be covering the West, Drew will be covering the East. So we get started with possibly the best series of the 4, Grizzlies, Warriors. This series started last night, and what a game it was. The Warriors won a 117-116, despite Draymond Green getting ejected right before halftime, and a decision made by the refs that I never would have thought would be made. Even without their defensive leader, the Warriors rallied and ended up defeating the young Grizzlies behind yet another huge performance from Jordan Poole, who's become an absolute revelation in these playoffs, scoring a playoff career high 31 points, grabbing 8 rebounds, and dishing out 9 assists. All that off the bench. Not enough people talk about how bright this Warrior team's future is with guys like Jordan Poole, Jonathan Kuminga, who played solid minutes yesterday, James Wiseman if he ever gets healthy, and Moses Moody, who's fun when he plays. Besides the point, this first game showed a lot. It showed that the Grizzlies probably aren't ready to win a championship, and that's okay. This is their first time with this core in this situation, and they're still a few pieces away. Ja Morant had an incredible game, scoring 34 points, 9 rebounds, and 10 assists, and a near triple-double, but showed that his defense could use some major work as he was barbecue chicken out there for any Warriors players. The guy who really stood out for the Grizzlies in this game was my birthday twin, Jaren Jackson Jr., who, after struggling to stay on the floor in the Minnesota series due to foul trouble, had himself a game yesterday, scoring 33 points, including 6 3-pointers, 10 rebounds, and guess what? Only 3 fouls. If they're going to win the series, they need Jaren to have games like that consistently, as the second star needs to step up in a series like this. Now, this was a bad game for Desmond Bane and Dillon Brooks, both shooting 30% or worse from the field, scoring 9 and 8 respectively. Despite that, they both showed their worth, playing great defense, especially on Klay Thompson, who had a rough day, only scoring 15, but shooting 6 of 19, including missing 2 free throws that almost cost Golden State the game. If it weren't for a great defensive read by him at the end, we could be looking at a Grizzlies 1-0 series lead. That's how close this game was. All in all, I still have the Warriors winning, as their top guys have been here and know how to win, while the Grizzlies are young and are going to be here for years to come, but just not this year. I have the Warriors in 7, but this series should be a doozy.
Absolutely. Golden State probably just too much for this young Grizzlies team to handle. But up next, we're heading out east, where the Bucks handed the Celtics their first loss of the postseason to the tune of 101-89 victory. This was despite some uncharacteristically inefficient shooting nights from Giannis Antetokounmpo and Drew Holiday, who shot both 19 and 10% lower than their averages from the field, respectively. This is Milwaukee's 4th dominant win in 6 playoff games thus far, and it doesn't seem like they've slowed down at all after kicking Chicago in the butt and sending them packing in their brief 5-game series back in round 1. But to Boston fans out there, 2 words: be worried. The Celtics look dominant in their sweep over the Brooklyn Nets, sure, but looking back on it, that team was perhaps even more dysfunctional than they were talented, and to anyone who's been watching this season, that is saying a lot. Boston came into the series as the favorites, and perhaps deservedly so given their overall roster talent, but what they don't have is the most dominant player on the court in this series, and I think Sunday's game reminded the world of that. Boston, I'm not here to tell you that the sky is falling. It's not yet at least. But the outcome of Sunday's game is concerning for a team that was coming off of ample rest after a 4-game sweep and with all the momentum in the world. You now find yourselves in the crosshairs of the defending world champions. Middleton or no, we can't forget that about this Bucks team. They have rebounded from that loss very well so far. Now, Boston, defensively you did have an all right showing and you made Milwaukee's best scorers uncomfortable throughout. But if Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown can't step it up back offensively and quick, you're going to be finding yourselves parking the team bus back in Harvard Yard and wondering where it all went wrong. As you may have been able to tell based on my tone, I have been going against the grain on this series since before it started, and as such, I am sticking with my guns. Bucks in 6. Marcus?
Yeah, this series, I mean, before this, when I heard Chris Middleton wasn't playing, I thought, oh, okay, the other team should win pretty easily, but that has been the case in Game 1. The next series starts tonight, and that's Phoenix-Dallas. Now, our very own John Kelley predicted that the Dallas Mavericks were going to make it to the finals on Crossfire earlier this semester, and I said he was crazy, I'm not going to lie, but here we are. At the beginning of the playoffs, the Phoenix Suns were my championship favorite, as I would love for my guy Chris Paul to win a championship in his storied career, but that Pelicans series scared me. I wasn't expecting the Suns to play that bad against that Pelicans team, and although they won in 6, they probably should have won in 4 or 5, and it took a literal perfect game from CP3 to defeat that scrappy Pelican team. On the other side, the Dallas Mavericks proved that they were a team to fear, as they beat the Jazz twice without their superstar and possible future MVP Luka Doncic. Blame that on the inconsistency of the Utah Jazz if you want, as they're a dumpster fire right now, and we don't even need to get into that. But it takes 2 to tango, and the Mavs proved something not a lot of people thought they could do, and that was win without Luka. Jalen Brunson had a spectacular series against the Jazz, averaging an incredible 27.8 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists in a series win against the Jazz. Jalen is going to be the difference maker, because if he can play the same way he did against the Jazz, the Suns might be in trouble. Keyword, might, because the Jazz didn't have a CP3. For my money, I think Chris Paul locked down Jalen Brunson and forced guys like Spencer Dinwiddie, who didn't have a good first round, to beat them. Balance that with a top 3 defensive player of the year finisher Mikal Bridges guarding Luka Doncic, and the Suns have all their bases covered. They need a healthy Devin Booker to beat this Mavericks team, though, as D-Book has had a nagging injury which showed in the last game against Nola. He's had a couple of days of rest, so let's hope he's better than he was in Game 6. If he can go back to the Booker we saw in Game 1, I see the Suns winning in 5 or 6. If not, we might be seeing an upset, as Dallas could win this in 7. My official prediction, however, is staying true to my prediction earlier and going Suns in 6.
Absolutely, but similar to that series with the Bucks in Boston, in the NBA especially, what do I always say? I always say that in the NBA, more than any other league, the team with the best player on the court, you can't count them out. It comes with a huge advantage. This is why I personally wouldn't be surprised to see Dallas take the upset. But on to the last series we'll be covering tonight. The Philadelphia 76ers and Miami Heat's round 2 matchup is getting underway in today's early evening slot. Now, without final results from Game 1, we'll need to look back at 2 very different roads that these 2 squads took to get to the second round. Miami, great work taking care of business against Atlanta. Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo led this team to a pretty smooth series win in just 5 games, and, well, truth be told, since the result was never really in doubt, they pretty much flew under the radar. Look, for a 1 seed, it is rarely a good thing to be dominating headlines in the first round. So Miami, props to you for avoiding that and handling business, like I said, under the radar. Now, Philadelphia, on the other hand. Fellas, things got a little dicey again in the Toronto series. We all saw it. The 76ers got off to an excellent 3-0 start in that series, but, well, then the mood started getting a little bit tense as the lights came on for the Raptors, and they took the following 2 games. Now, the 76ers did rebound and cap off the series in 6 games. But any Philadelphians out there? You'd be lying if you said to me that you weren't seriously worried about making the wrong kind of history. As Toronto went into Game 6 with a chance to tie the series, remember that is again after starting off down 3-0. These fears are completely justified for a franchise that has continually under-delivered on expectations in the postseason, and a franchise who is now led by Coach Doc Rivers, a head coach known for doing the same throughout his career. With recent reports that their star player Joel Embiid is set to miss at least the first 2 games of the series, I don't love Philly's odds of breaking through that glass ceiling, at least not this year. All that said, I'm going to stick with my pick that I was making before this matchup was even set. Heat in 5. They are dangerous.
Thanks so much for coming on, Marcus and Drew. I can't wait to see how those predictions fare going forward. When we come back, we will be joined with Clark Dalton as he breaks down his favorite moments in Longhorn sports.
Welcome back into College Press Box. Thanks for sticking around. We now toss it over to Clark Dalton for his top 5 moments in Longhorn sports. Clark, take it away.
Thank you, Jaxie. And it's kind of crazy because when your parents are talking about college, you kind of make fun of them. They're like, oh, it goes so fast. And I used to go, ha ha. Now I'm here and I'm trying to remember my favorite moments in sports, but just joking around. This list is going to be a little bit different because we're going to do it by year. It's going to be by my freshman year, my sophomore year, my junior year, and my senior year. It's a bunch of different moments. I'll guide you through them. Let's get right into it. Starting off with number 1. Let's go back all the way to 2018 when Clark's career started off with a bang. 3rd and 4, Sam Ehlinger throws it to little Jordan Humphrey, getting the touchdown, and Texas exploded, beating USC and DKR with 103,000 people in the stands. Caden Stearns had a huge blocked kick right here, which was returned for a touchdown by Anthony Wheeler. Texas scored 34 points unanswered, won 37-14. They went on to win the Sugar Bowl that season and beat Oklahoma and Red River. This is really the moment where they became a special team. Number 2. What's better than one number 1 team going down? 2 number 1 teams going down. That happened twice my sophomore year with volleyball, saying not in my house against Baylor, and softball, beating the defending national champion UCLA Bruins on the road. Miranda Ellis was excellent this night. She had 7 strikeouts, but the key moment was right there as Lauren Burke and Mary Ikapo had back-to-back home runs. Texas ended up winning this one 6-4. If it had not been for COVID, this team possibly could have won a national championship. They were truly excellent throughout the season. Number 3. This is the year Texas won the Directors' Cup, and it was truly special because it started with women's basketball. Charlie Collier carried the team, but Lauren Ebo sealed the deal, beating Maryland 64-59 to advance to the Elite 8 for the first time in 5 years. And then after an 0-3 start, Texas baseball managed to find a way to get all the way to the College World Series. And this is when Ivan Melendez truly became Ivan Melendez because he had 51 RBIs that season. And who can forget about tennis? Lulu's son winning the national championship in the final single set 4-3 against Pepperdine, a program they had traditionally struggled against. Number 4. I've always been a sucker for the movie Hoosiers, so it was really cool to see the Greg Gym game have this environment. This game wasn't necessarily about the score, but it's just the way you felt. It was kind of like being in a movie, having that classic small town feel with UT Sports, and it was the first time in 35 years that they had Jim and Gregory, and you could feel the excitement in the arena, and Texas truly played to the tune of the fans that night. They rushed the court at the end of the game, and everybody came in and started throwing up their hook'em signs. It's a sight I'll never forget, and I think it's one of my favorite moments because it teaches you something about sports moments. It's not necessarily about the setting of the game or whether Texas won or not, but who you were with and the way it made you feel in the moment. And that was one of my favorites because it made it feel like a family again. And before I toss it back to Emme, I want to say a couple things tonight. Whoever accepted me into the University of Texas, thank you. I owe you a huge thank you because looking back at these moments, not every kid in college gets to do this. And that is truly, truly special. And I know people complain about Texas sports sometimes because they don't think they win as much as they should, but I've been spoiled with some of the athletes I've been able to watch. Bijan Robinson, Sam Ehlinger, Miranda Ellis, Breonna Butler, Micaiah White, Logan Eggleston, Bianca Nanatarati, Ivan Melendez, Trey Faltini, just to name a few. And also, I wanted to thank my family because I know you guys have been putting up with my love of sports for years. In fact, like that's something that dominates the dinner table. And I'm sorry, Morgan, I know you hated that when I would go on rants for 20 minutes. That is something I do in studio as well. But I just wanted to thank you guys for being there all the way. And you always make me feel like I'm here. And I always want to share my love of sports with people just because I'm so passionate about it. And I feel like it's the right thing to do because it's something everybody should be involved in because it's a game and it's fun. Now let's go back to Emme.
Thank you so much for that, Clark, and it's nice to see that with all the heartbreak of being a Texas fan, there were some good moments to actually look back on and remember and celebrate. But when we return, we'll take a look at this last week in Texas sports. You won't want to miss it. Stick around.
Welcome back into College Press Box. This past Saturday, Texas rowing competed at home for the Longhorn Invite. Texas closed out the regular season at Walter E. Long Lake in style with a sweep of 5 races. The Longhorns remained #1 in the nation, but they were competing against numerous other high-ranked squads, like number 10 Ohio State, number 14 Virginia, and number 16 SMU. Texas rowing will be back on the water competing on Sunday, May 15th, when they host the Big 12 Championship at home. The Longhorns will be looking to grab their 7th straight conference title.
4 Longhorns will compete in the USA Basketball 3-times national, including senior Aaliyah Matharu, junior Shea Hawley, and Rory Harmon. The Longhorns were given the invitation based on their performance in the 2022 NCAA tournament, where they finished in the Elite 8 round. The tournament will run from May 13th to May 15th in Springfield, Massachusetts at the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame.
A trio from Texas men's swimming are among 41 USA swimmers chosen for the 2022 FINA World Championships. The 3 are Carson Foster, Drew Keebler, and Kobe Carrozza. The rosters for Team USA were selected following performances from last week's Phillips 66 International Team Trials. These Longhorns will be competing for Team USA June 18th through July 3rd in Budapest, Hungary.
USA Swimming announced the appointment of Texas's own Eddie Reese and Carol Capitani at the U.S. as U.S. assistant coaches for the 2022 championships. Reese has served as the head coach for the U.S. Olympic men's team 3 times, and Capitani has previously served as the U.S. women's coach in the World University Games. 3 Longhorn swimmers, Jaxie was saying, will also be competing in these championships, set to kick off this summer, June 18th to July 3rd in Budapest, Hungary.
Now let's take a look at this week in Longhorn sports. Starting on Tuesday, Texas baseball takes on Houston Baptist at 6:30 p.m. on Longhorn Network. Next up for Texas baseball is their weekend series against West Virginia. Friday's game is at 5:30, Saturday's at 3, and Sundays will be at noon. All 3 will be on ESPN+. Staying on the diamond, Texas softball also has a Big 12 series matchup this weekend against Baylor. Friday's game is at 6:30, Saturday's is at 1, and Sundays will be at 1 as well. All 3 of these will be on Longhorn Network.
To celebrate us graduating seniors, let's take a look back at some of our best moments throughout the years.
Texas football is ranked in the top 15. Texas volleyball will compete on new stomping grounds, and the Eastern Conference Finals are soon approaching. All of this and more coming up on College Crossfire.
College Crossfire first-timer, Matt Marinchak. Matt, how you feeling?
Good, great to be here. The first college football rankings drop, and Chris Beard at Texas tips off all of this coming up on Texas Countdown.
Andy Reid. Andy, how are you doing? You know, you got a big showdown against the Minnesota Vikings this weekend. How are you doing this week?
Pretty good. I cut off a chicken head, had it run around, and it predicted that we're going to win this week.
All right, that's what I like to hear.
Hello and welcome into the very first episode of the 1-0 Sports Show. I'm your host, Thomas Fitch, joined alongside by my co-host, Robert Trevino.
Thanks for joining us this morning. Welcome to the show that's just trying to go 1-0 week in and week out.
Our basketball analyst, Emme Basnett, to the show. How are you doing tonight? How are you feeling?
I am so good and super happy to be back on Press Box. It's been a minute, so I'm really excited to chat about some women's basketball.
On second base, Jake Herman. No relation to Tom Herman.
No relation, but hopefully much like Tom Herman, I can be 1-0.
All right. Well, we got some boos already from the crowd.
Wow. Boo me all you want.
Wow.
And another TSTV rookie, we've got Clark Dalton here. Clark, how you doing?
Great, having a fun freshman year. Hey, they're fashionable.
Cargos.
You know what? I'm glad to have all of you here on tonight, despite your cargo shorts. So let's dive right on in.
All right, fellas, that's enough talk. Let's talk.
We're going to take you guys through it now. Hope you follow along, get some of that draft day excitement. And now I get to say some of the most exciting words in football. The Cincinnati Bengals are on the clock.
Let's introduce tonight's panel for the first ever all-women show on College Crossfire in the show's 15-plus years on being in the airwaves.
I'm standing here with
Jaxie.
So, Jaxie, who's going to win this weekend?
Texas Longhorns, baby.
Okay, and why is that?
Because we are so good.
We are so good.
The defense is lacking a little bit, but I think we're going to pick it up this weekend.
We're going to
pick it up this weekend.
How about try that? Now talk.
Thanks, Robert and Emme. I'm Matt Marinchak here with Jake Kermit at the Frank Irwin Center. The atmosphere is electric tonight. You got the #1 team in the country, the Baylor Bears, come in and take on the Longhorns.
Jason Conander, Clark Dalton here to recap an exciting night here on campus. First question for you, Clark. What did you think about the atmosphere?
I thought the atmosphere was electric. It felt like I know this is a bit hyperbolic, but it felt true. It felt like an NCAA tournament game with all the students coming in, cheering at their loudest. What do you think?
I agree with Eric. I don't believe they should have made a tournament. A 500 record shouldn't warrant a tournament bid, especially a team such like high aspirations as Texas had and a team so big as Texas. And I don't think they should have made it.
On the fielding side, not too many errors, but they did have 2 against Mississippi State. But the biggest problem here is pitching. And their game today against Ole Miss, they went through at least 5 separate pitchers.
And just like Julia Grosso, she was also part of the Canadian Women's World Cup team. So she has professional experience, and that is very evident when she takes the field. During this first game again, she proved that just like last year, she will be an important component for the Texas defense, shutting down several one-on-one attempts.
Yeah, like you were saying, it's an impressive road win for Texas, and they knocked off the defending national champions, #3 Stanford, making history since this was their first non-conference home loss since 2017.
He went 4 for 6 at the plate today. Clearly, you were seeing the ball well. What was your approach during those at-bats?
I was just chasing a fastball, getting one good pitch to hit.
The question is, should the Astros be stripped of that 2017 World Series title? Clark?
Yes. We're about to get a lot of boos in the studio. Cheating is encouraged. Look, hang on just a second. In 2017, the New York Times described sign stealing in baseball as an art form, something that's even admired. Now, look, what the Astros did was wrong, and it was by a camera, but that's kind of by a technicality, and we haven't really established all of the rules surrounding sign stealing in baseball.
I think that they're a good team. They have a good ceiling, and I'm going to use a metaphor that Michael Jordan used a couple years ago when talking about the North Carolina football team. He said the ceiling is the roof. And being the fact that the football team plays outside, there is no roof, so they have a pretty high ceiling. So I think Texas A&M's team has a high ceiling.
Anybody can still win this game.
Rams 2002, Panthers 2004.
Not 2002.
2001, Rams 2001, Rams 2001, Panthers 2004, Eagles 2005.
Texas lost to Kansas in football, Texas lost to Kansas in football, and Texas Longhorns lost a game of football to the Kansas Jayhawks.
So at the Texas volleyball games, they all go out on the court before, and there's a lady at the front that leads these stretches. I think if they did a nice team Zumba class, that could be fun. I think, just a group effort, I think it'd be a fun, nice team atmosphere.
All right, Team Zumba. Cameron Dicker to kicker. He's had so many great kicks in his career. I think if you get him, he could be an next Justin Tucker. So, you know what? If you want a kicker, get Dicker.
Can I say what I don't want pumped into the stadium? That "Don't Stop Believin'" song. I'm sorry to come out against it, but it was a cool one-time thing against Iowa State. All right, believe me, I was there. It was electric. Everyone with their phones out. It was awesome. Okay, it was once-in-a-lifetime moment. College football for the University of Texas at Austin. It was incredible. But now it has been overdone to death. Playing "Don't Stop Believin'."
We do have time for FaceTime, so take it away.
Well, I'm going to take today's FaceTime to reach out to a dear friend, Bryce Harper. I've grown up a Nationals fan, as hard as it's been, watching you lose time and time again in elimination games, which you somehow find a way to lead, but still lose. So Bryce Harper, come home to DC. We have a great team waiting for you. I promise the bullpen won't blow it this time. That's all I got.
John?
I think we should do a land swap. If Texas wins, we just gain all of Oklahoma. And if Oklahoma
No one wants Oklahoma.
If Oklahoma wins, we give them the panhandle.
But I think if you send someone onto the field, just send a streaker, just doesn't matter what type of person.
Yeah, I say release Bevo and just see what happens. I mean, we saw what happened with Uga. So if he can just replicate that in some way, I think it would distract pretty much anyone.
For those who don't know, it's Clark's birthday. He is 20 years old, ladies and gentlemen. Woo! Happy birthday, Clark.
Thanks, Dad. I really appreciate it.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Texas needs to win this week. You lose to Kansas. Like, come on, you can't lose to Kansas. Fire everybody if you lose to Kansas. I think if we lose to Kansas, I'm going to the transfer portal.
But on behalf of Adam Ogburn, Edley, Termillion, everyone in studio and Master Control, I'm John Kelley. Have a great morning.
I'm Jay Kerman saying good night for now, and we'll see you next week.
For all of us in the studio, the panelists, and everyone in Master Control, I'm Drew Jacob. Have a wonderful evening, and you can't see me.
Well, thank you for that lovely tribute to our senior class. I'm so thankful for the last 4 years that I've spent at this place. It's been my home away from home. All these people have become such great friends of mine. I can't wait to see where everyone ends up. But that wraps up things for this week's episode of College Press Box, my last ever College Press Box. Please be sure to tune into our other shows this week, including College Crossfire on Wednesday and a special 1-0 Sports episode on Friday afternoon with Thomas Fitch and Robert Trevino. On behalf of all of the crew here at TSTV, I'm Jaxie Pidgeon alongside Emme Basnett and the rest of the senior class. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful evening. Woo!
Wow.